Hi, my name is Sophia Galleguillos, and I'm going to go over my presentation about Italian Americans. And it's been many years since Italians began immigrating to the US and settled down, so it's not that common to hear about their migration story. And they began migrating to the US around 1880, though the big surge was around the 1920s. Italian Americans are a group of interest for me because I grew up in Queens, New York City, where there's a very large Italian population. And I went to school with plenty of Italians. So my friends were Italian, neighbors, and teachers, though it was primarily because I also lived in a neighborhood that just had a high Italian population. Some connections that I have to the culture are one being the Italian Street Festival that happens every year in September, which is the beginning of the school year, and the festival would completely just take over my neighborhood. The It would close down the main street for the entire weekend and just filled with people, lots of culture, music, food, games, and just life. Another memory is when Italy won the World Cup back in 2006, and just the whole city just went crazy celebrating. Everyone was out honking their horns, driving around, partying just nonstop. And the biggest and most important connection to me would probably be my local pizzeria called Rose's Pizza, which I love and miss dearly, and I have a photo of it up on this slide. So, some fun facts that I thought would be good to share are that most Italians come from the southern regions of Italy, which is called Mezzogiorno, and that's mostly due to the severe poverty that those cities were experiencing. Another fact is that many Italian migrants worked in construction and built infrastructure um, throughout the US, such as like factories, mines, tunnels, and many of them dealt with a lot of unsafe working conditions, especially during the 1920s when they were all migrating here. And then another is that with the many Italians that were settling across the US, they formed their own little Italy's in cities such as like Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, New Orleans, and San Francisco. Another fact is that every year in the New York City, Little Italy, there's a very large festival called San Gennaro, and it first began in 1926, and it's meant to celebrate the Saint Gennaro of Naples. And so it was started by the Neapolitan immigrants that settled on Mulberry Street, which is on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And the festival lasts 11 days and takes up 11 blocks of Little Italy. A final fact is that back in the day, there were five major mafia families in New York City: the Bonono family, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi. These families ran the city since 1931, and they dealt with money laundering, trafficking, and selling illegal goods. And they were eventually stopped with the RICO Act that was passed in 1970, and the act was effective against organized crimes and led to many convictions. Some mafia families are still around today, they're just not as powerful as they used to be. And so for my profile, I chose my neighbor Anthony. I don't have a photo of him, but I found an image on Google Maps, and he's just always sitting on a white chair on the steps of his house. And I've basically known Anthony my entire life, and part of the story is real, and the other part is fictitious. So the real portion is that Anthony has a neurological disease that I don't know the exact name of, but my parents and older siblings knew him before he got sick. The fictional portion is that just his father, Italian, migrating to the US from Sicily, trying to find a solution for his family because they were just experiencing lots of poverty and just struggling too much back home. So he moved to New York City, to a neighborhood that had many other settled, like Italians that had settled there. He worked in construction, would send money back, and eventually had enough to have a home that was stable for his family to come over. Anthony arrived here when he was about 5 years old. And there's just a very strong family dynamic between Anthony's parents and his siblings, which is something that is very common among Italian culture. They're just very loyal and unified. And just to finish off here, just some Italian immigrants. Oh, not immigrants, sorry, Italian Americans that you may recognize from movies or TV shows, such as like Joey Tribbiani from Friends, The Godfather, George Costanza from Seinfeld, Tony Soprano from The Sopranos, and Rocky. Thank you.